Under the blazing sun, a line of vehicles stretched outside the heavily fortified U.S. military base, guards standing rigidly at their posts, scanning each ID card with mechanical precision, their eyes trained to notice the slightest irregularity when an old man wearing a faded jacket, his cap pulled low, slowly shuffled forward, his ID trembling slightly in his wrinkled hand as he offered it to the young soldier at the gate. The guard took it, glanced, and then with a smirk passed it to the scanner. The machine beeped once, then glitched, throwing out a red warning. The guard chuckled nervously and said, "Sir, this ID is fake. This isn't real. What are you doing here?" And the other guards laughed too, their laughter filling the tense air, dismissing the old man as just another drifter trying to sneak past military security. But the scanner did not stop beeping, the sound growing sharper, harsher, until suddenly the screen lit up in bold red letters, "Top Secret Alert General." Immediately, the laughter froze in their throats. The guards looked at each other, confusion washing over them, because this had never happened before. Never had a fake ID triggered the system to bypass them entirely and directly alert command. The youngest guard swallowed hard, his heart racing as he whispered, "This isn't a joke anymore." And before anyone could respond, alarms began to blare, heavy gates began to lock, and the radio crackled alive with orders from the base's control tower. "Secure the perimeter, lockdown protocol, do not let him move." The old man stood silently, his eyes dark with memories, his posture suddenly shifting from frail to commanding, as though decades fell from his shoulders in an instant. The guards, still pointing rifles, hesitated, sensing something they couldn't explain. Then a convoy of black SUV roared toward the gate, dust flying, and from the front car stepped out a four-star general, his face pale, his jaw tight, moving faster than anyone had ever seen him. He waved the guards down, his voice sharp with urgency. Stand down, lower your weapons now." The soldiers froze, not understanding, but they obeyed, lowering their rifles. The old man finally lifted his head, his eyes locking with the general's, and in that moment it was clear they knew each other, decades of war and secrets written in their expressions. The general saluted first, his voice cracking, "Sir, we thought you were gone." The guards blinked, stunned into silence, realizing the old veteran wasn't just anyone. He was a ghost from history, a name erased from records, a man whispered about in classified files as a shadow operative who had vanished years ago, presumed dead on a mission that was still buried under layers of secrecy, and now here he was, standing in front of them with a fake ID that somehow carried the weight to shake the entire base. The old man didn't speak at first. He simply walked forward, past the still, shaking guards, and the general followed, every step echoing like a march back into the past. And finally, inside the command tent, the truth unraveled. He revealed that he had been living under false identities for years, hiding in plain sight, carrying with him knowledge too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. He had returned not by accident, but by necessity, because the same threat that had consumed his life decades ago was resurfacing, stronger, bolder, ready to strike. The general listened with clenched fists, his eyes darting to the classified monitors around them, where encrypted codes were flashing, data streams already showing infiltration attempts, and suddenly it all made sense why the system had recognized him, why the ID scanner had alerted the highest levels of command, because somewhere deep in the Pentagon's buried files, his identity was tagged as an ultimate contingency, a living failsafe, a man whose presence alone meant the nation faced something catastrophic outside. The guards who had laughed minutes ago now stood stiff with unease, whispering among themselves, realizing they had mocked someone who carried secrets that could rewrite history. And as the sun dipped lower, the base moved into a heightened state of readiness. Jets prepped on the runway, satellites redirected, encrypted calls buzzing through secure lines, all because one old veteran with a fake ID had stepped to the gate. Yet it was no ordinary fake. It was a signal, a hidden key, a test of whether the nation still remembered its shadows. The guards never laughed again that night, because they understood that sometimes the man who looks weakest, who seems forgotten, may carry the heaviest burden. And when the general and the old veteran emerged hours later, their faces grim, their steps heavy, the silence around them was deafening. The general turned to his men and said, "From this moment, what you saw, what you heard, never leaves this ground. This is not a story for history books. This is not a tale for newspapers. This is something you will take to your graves." And the soldiers nodded, their youthful arrogance burned away, while the old veteran simply placed his cap back on, his eyes scanning the horizon, as if he could already see the storm approaching, and though he had been dismissed as a relic, laughed at for holding a fake card, he had proven that sometimes truth wears the mask of fiction, and that even in laughter lies the spark of revelation. For when the base locked down, when the general was alerted, when the alarms shook the air, the nation unknowingly took its first step into a war hidden from the world, a war only the old veteran had seen coming, and now it was here under the blazing afternoon sun. The U.S. military base looked like an island of steel and discipline, its high fences shimmering in the heat, and its armed guards checking IDs with machine-like focus, each soldier trained to detect lies, forged identities, and even the smallest signs of nervousness. And into this tightly wound rhythm came an old man, his boots worn thin, his jacket faded, his face lined with years of battles fought and burdens carried. He held a flimsy-looking ID card between fingers that shook just enough to draw suspicion. And when he reached the front of the line, the young guard, barely older than 20, took the card, smirked, and ran it under the scanner, already expecting it to be fake. The machine beeped sharply, its screen flashing red, and the guard laughed, waving it to his comrades. "Look at this, it's fake, some old-timer trying to bluff his way in." The others chuckled too, one even whispering, "Maybe he thinks we'll let him in for nostalgia." But then the laughter froze as the scanner beep changed, not the usual rejection tone, but a piercing alarm, and the monitor blazed to life with words none of them had ever seen before. "Top secret clearance alert general immediately." Silence fell like a hammer. The guards looked at each other, their grins fading into pale shock, and the young soldier who had marked the ID swallowed hard, muttering, This can't be right." Before anyone could move, alarms across the base erupted, heavy gates slammed shut, sirens wailed overhead, and the radios on every guard's vest hissed with urgent commands from command control. Lockdown protocol, secure all perimeters, do not engage the subject until further notice. Rifles that had been casually slung were raised again, but this time their hands trembled, because the system wasn't reacting to a threat. It was reacting to a name buried deep in shadows. The old veteran stood still, his head low, but his posture was no longer frail. There was a steadiness in the way he planted his feet, the way his silence carried authority. And when black SUV screeched to a halt at the gate, kicking up dust, the soldiers nearly jumped out of their skins, because stepping out was the base general himself, a four-star whose presence alone meant the situation had spiraled into something beyond ordinary. The general's eyes locked on the old man, and in a move that stunned the guards, he raised his hand in a crisp salute, his voice rough with memory and disbelief. "Sir, you're alive." The guards blinked, their rifles lowering involuntarily, confusion boiling inside them. Alive? Had they just mocked a legend? The old man finally looked up, his eyes burning with an intensity no years could dim, and though his ID looked fake, though his body looked worn, his presence radiated command. He didn't answer right away, and the general stepped closer, waving his men aside. "You're not supposed to be here. Not unless..." His words trailed off, his jaw tightening as realization struck, and the old veteran finally spoke, his voice gravelly but steady. "It's back, and you know what I mean." The general's face darkened, and he motioned the guards to stand down completely, guiding the old man past the gate while the soldiers stared, their minds reeling at what they had just witnessed. Inside the command tent, screens flickered with encrypted warnings, strange codes crawling across monitors, and the old veteran laid out a story none of them wanted to believe. He had vanished decades ago on a mission so secret it had been wiped from official history. His death reported, his name erased, but he had not died. Instead, he had gone underground, living in obscurity, carrying with him knowledge of an enemy so dangerous its very existence was hidden from the public. He told the general, I kept the ID, doctored it, not to fool your guards, but to trigger the system, because the system knows me even if the world does not. And the general nodded grimly, recalling whispers in classified files, the codename of a man who had been the nation's ultimate shadow, a failsafe for when all else failed. The base was now on full alert. Jets were being armed, satellites retuned, encrypted orders flying across continents, and all because one old man had shown up at the gate. The guards outside whispered among themselves, shame heavy in their voices. We laughed at him. We thought he was a joke. But there was no joke in the way the general carried himself now, no laughter in the way the base hummed with readiness, for they understood too late that the veteran was no ordinary man. He was the kind of figure who lived between myth and truth, his very presence a sign that something catastrophic loomed on the horizon when the general returned with him hours later, their faces drawn, their eyes grim. He gave only one order to his men: what you saw today, what you heard, does not leave this ground. This is buried deeper than your careers, deeper than your lives. You speak of it to no one. The soldiers nodded, chastened, their earlier arrogance burned away, and the old veteran simply pulled his cap lower, his gaze fixed far beyond the fences of the base, as if seeing enemies invisible to all but him. And though to the world outside nothing had changed, inside those gates every man now knew they had stood at the threshold of history, that the fake ID was never about deception. It was about awakening the system to a danger too vast to ignore. The laughter that had mocked him now seemed a sin, because in truth, the old veteran had returned not for recognition, not for honor, but because war had come again, a war unseen, a war only he could sense, and his presence was the warning bell, a bell so loud it had shaken the very foundations of command. And as night fell over the base, with jets ready and soldiers silent, the old man's words lingered in their minds like a prophecy. It's back, and this time it won't stop.